qualities, bills and paths, and thus swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. Okay, let's go to just do the 4 contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Senjen damje dewatang dewe jutang den pajuchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawajuchik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindrawajuchik, nering chak tang ni tam trawe tang nom chempo lane pajuchik. So good evening to all of you who came in late. Lee, I'm very happy to see you. For Lee and Roland and Cherry, please, if you want to stop me at any point, please do. You'll see that all these people are very great debaters. They love to talk and share during the talks, and that's wonderful because that's what I like. Because especially with this particular topic, which is called the Shambhala Wisdom of the Great Eastern Sun, Practical Hows for Enlightened Living. And this is actually part 5, but it's very easy to tune in to the parts, because what's happened, if you look at the back of the Great Eastern Sun, it says, Trungpa possessed uncanny insight into our deepest fears and how these are heightened by the pressures of today's society. He addresses many of them here: the speed and alienation of modern life, depression, materialism, aggression, anger, and anxiety, and a crippling lack of self-worth. Now, when you look at the Shambhala teachings, okay, he had this unshakable belief in the basic goodness of beings. So our basic goodness is what he called the primordial dot, which is actually your absolute and total true nature. If those of you can put on your cameras, I'll be very happy, because then I can see exactly how you are bearing up in the talk, and if you're understanding. I like to see your faces, if possible, okay? But when you look at it, his most ardent message that he gave in the Shambhala teachings is, he said, I want to take your absolute everyday life, and I want to apply that primordial dot, that basic absolute primordial consciousness that we have, that awakened nature, that Buddha nature, to apply it to all these things that we confront in our daily lives, which are so, so difficult. And he said, then you get workable solutions. So I'm going to start with a little story, which is a very interesting story. And it goes like this. One evening, as the monk Wan Hao in the 7th century was crossing the desert, he stopped at a small patch of green where there were a few trees and some water, and he went to sleep. He was in the desert. Toward midnight, he awoke very thirsty. It was pitch dark. He groped along on all fours, searching for water. At last, his hand touched a cup on the ground. He picked it up and he drank. Oh, how delicious. Then he bowed in gratitude to Buddha for the gift of water, and the next morning he woke up and saw beside him what he had taken for a cup during the night. It was a shattered skull, blood-caked, and with shreds of flesh still stuck to the cheekbones. Strange insects crawled or floated on the surface of the filthy rainwater inside of this cup, okay? Wanha looked at the skull and felt a great wave of nausea. He opened his mouth. As soon as the vomit poured out, his mind opened and he understood. He said, last night, since he hadn't seen and he hadn't thought, the water was delicious. He was thirsty. He said to himself, this morning, when seeing and thinking had made him vomit. Now listen carefully to this because I want to really apply it to your life. He said to himself, thinking makes good and bad, life and death. And without thinking, there is no universe, there is no Buddha, there's no Dharma. All is one. And this one is empty, and there was no need now to find a master. He already understood life and death. What more was there to learn? So he turned and started back across the desert to Korea. Now think about this story and think how it applies to your life. Okay, it's such a vital story because think how many times we judge things based on all our conditioning in life. Think about the different cultures we've lived in different lifetimes, and that was how we perceive things. This is good and this is bad. Different culture, different perception. Doesn't matter, maybe so much. If you're looking at a painting and I like it and you don't, it doesn't matter. But how often is it misjudging people rather than seeing them with pure perception as they really are? Remember, the Buddha said, Shariputra, if you can't see my pure realm, you can't blame it on me. It's that you are seeing with distorted perception that is how you see it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So when we learn with the Shambhala wisdom and with our original natures to actually start seeing things with a pure perception as they really are, Shambhala wisdom trains us to see with a purer perception, and it's based on that dot, that primordial dot, that awakened nature, that part of you that knows how to conduct this life and all the other dimensions. It's not that that consciousness only relates to pure realms. That consciousness relates to everything in your life. That's why it's so important to get in touch with it. And some of you are natural. Now, I saw an article in the paper. I still read the paper. For some of you young ones, you go, oh my God, she still reads the paper. You know, I much prefer the paper to the phone, okay, because I see it, the pictures, I love it, okay. So I actually found 2 articles this last week, and I think they're so applicable here. So this one was called, it just alerted me, it was called The Laughter Museum Aims to Blow Away the Blues. Okay, now let me tell you, this is in Croatia, okay, near to you, Iga, okay, somewhere near you, I think, Croatia. A new museum of laughter is offering to put people through the spinner to wash away the negativity of modern life. Visitors to the HOWS in the Croatian capital Zagreb are blasted with a puff of white smoke once they step inside to blow away their worries before climbing into a giant washing machine. The centrifuge of life then whips them away Willy Wonka style down a twisting slide into a pool filled with little white balls where their journey to a happier place starts. Its creator, Andrea Golubic, said she had the idea for the museum during the pandemic when people were feeling down, depressed, and isolated. She said, I realized I had a mission to heal people with laughter, she said. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. And she says it was her carefree 7-year-old that made her do this. And visitors press a button to be disinfected from negativity. And as soon as they step inside, you know, they go in And there are all kinds of things. So there's one song that goes, I've had so much plastic surgery. When I die, they will donate my body to Tupperware, is one of the featured zingers from the US, comedian Joan Rivers, who's had so much plastic surgery that she was singing this song. Anyway, it goes on, and how she invites children to the museum, and how the psychiatric departments want to bring children there. And she says, when you go in there, it's like entering childhood and being relieved of all the problems. And she says, you definitely don't have to pay a psychologist once you go into the museum. Now, that was the one article that I looked at. The other article, well, I think it was in London, I'm not sure, and I couldn't find the article afterwards, but it was also a place like a museum where people walked in and gave their cell phones. So they switch off their cell phones, not only switch off that it's in your pocket with a vibration, but they gave their cell phones in. And then you go into the museum in the article of this place, and then there's a pianist playing this beautiful music, and everyone's given a sheet of paper. And then they draw their favorite painting, and they're not allowed to have any distraction. So they go and they do painting, even if you can't paint, and all these different rooms where you go in. So I saw these two articles and I thought, I must cut them out for the Shambhala thing, because what are these places trying to do? And how do they fit with the Shambhala wisdom? Okay, they are trying to take us out of a rigid human self. They're trying to release us into a different nature, into a different zone, into a different place where your depression is not overwhelming, where all the things that you feel are not overwhelming. And it's really, really important. That's why I cut them out, to think, okay, we haven't got a laughing museum. We haven't got that beautiful place where you can go in and hand your cell phone, but we have got our own lives. And we could create this at times. We could create a space in our lives when we actually let everything go and let everything be, and where we are able to touch that beautiful awakened nature which knows everything. In many Buddhist prayers, there's a syllable called pe. Some of you might have done it in some of your prayers. Pe. It actually consists of two syllables, but it's pe. And when you use it in the chur practice, which is about when you give your whole body in the practice, and you're feeding all your own demons and the demons with your body. So you leave your body and then you feed the demons. And in order to jolt you, in the practice, it tells you to say, eh. And once or twice when I've been meditating with people, not on Zoom, but when I used to do it with you face to face, I used to often in the middle of the meditation just go, pe, to shock people. And then you shock, something jolts. And, when some masters point out this nature of mind, this primordial purity, some of them give you a clap over the head. It's the same as the pair. Tilopa threw Naropa off the mountain and all his bones broke. And then he came down, healed the bones, and then Naropa was awakened. Sometimes we need that jolt. Sometimes a very, very negative experience, like a bereavement, like a divorce, like a loss of a child, like things like that. Sometimes that jolts us absolutely, but actually wakes us up to who we really are. This being, this person, this Melanie is just a tiny, tiny grain of sand in your total sand pit. That part of you absolutely and totally is such a tiny thing. And we live according to the standards of that temporary, transient image. And we live with all the hatred and the angers and the anxieties and the fears of trying to go into any spaciousness. We live like that all the time. Imagine living in a loving, kind society where people care and where people accept you and where people never do harmful acts on behalf of their egos, which don't exist. I'm going to give you a little bit more that I wrote, and then I'll throw it open, and then you can ask or discuss. But we actually cannot avoid what is known as the Vajra truth. It's called the diamond truth of our lives. What are we here for? Are we here to work, to make money, to bring up children? Those we have to do, of course, but those aren't the purpose of our life. The purpose of our life is to come to the schoolroom and find that real nature and really look at what those karmic imprints are showing you, why you've been born into a particular family, why you've had all these ups and downs and ins and outs, because those were your creation. That's your creation. And you created it. And therefore, after death into the next incarnation, you're catapulted into a place where all of these things are around you. But imagine you just live your whole life with all of these things and trying to deal with them and trying to fight depression and trying to fight insecurity. Then you never get to do what you're here to do. The Vajra truth, okay, is that everything that we are going through is our own creation. We created it. It's in the Alaya consciousness. Every time you do something, there's an imprint, and it's in the Alaya consciousness. And that's the only part of the human consciousness that goes with us. The eye consciousness, ears, everything dissolves. The judgments dissolve. This whole life dissolves. The people I'm close to dissolve. And now, what am I left with? So the ego or the self that we look at is our own creation. And Buddha went through great lengths to describe this ego self, okay, what it's compiled of, which doesn't really exist per se. Now, what is this ego, did he say? 5 skandhas. The form, which ages and wrinkles up, the form, the feelings, which are never true, they're just something transient and temporary that we go through, the perceptions, how we see things, the habits that we develop, and the human consciousness, and all of them dissolve at death, except the Alaya consciousness, where all our karmic creations are. And that has to be resolved. And that's what we're doing here. Yet, we spend our whole life building up the ego, the self, which doesn't really exist per se. Yes, there's something, but it doesn't really exist per se. Defending it, protecting it, feeding it, and then it dissolves. And people say to me, don't you have contact again with your children, with your families, with your everything? Well, if I was being honest, the only ones you would have contact with are the ones that you haven't resolved. You probably would somewhere have contact. But no, this whole life needs to dissolve. And that's what the basis of the Shambhala wisdom is. The Shambhala wisdom and the Buddha Dharma both try to teach you to start recognizing. That word is such an important word. Recognize means recognize, means know who you are. Not this person, but who you really are. Know it so that you can wake up And there is that primordial dot that the Shambhala wisdom talks about, which is actually the totality of you. And why don't we wake up to it? When are we going to wake up to it? It doesn't need developing. That primordial consciousness does not need developing. The ego needs developing, but the primordial consciousness always was, always is, and always will be, and already has all the solutions you need and ways to deal with your relative life. But we don't trust it. We're suspicious when we suddenly wake up to something and we know it, but the people around us don't, and they belittle us, or they mock us, or they do things to us, and then we give it up. When we knew all along that was all we needed. That's why this Shambhala wisdom, called the Great Eastern Sun, it's always rising, whereas the setting sun is that samsara mentality. It's always taking what is basically good and analyzing it with thinking and dealing with it in a most unbelievable way. Now, I just want to read you. I've read this to you before. Kathy isn't here tonight, but she actually sent it to me long ago. It was Mingyur Dorje Rinpoche, when he wrote this letter when he was in the mountains, in the Himalayas. You know, what happened with him was he was this very popular like guru, teacher, Rinpoche and everything. And then one day he just walked out and he left. And he just went into the mountains, and all his disciples were absolutely horrified. Now, I've told you the story that when he came back, somebody sent me the video of him re-meeting with Tai Situ Rinpoche. I have never seen anything so beautiful in all my life, because when he found that nature, which is why he set out into the Himalayas and into the mountains, he just became light. He was light. And when he came to see Tai Situ to just come and greet him, the light was almost unbearable to watch when they met each other, because he found that light, and I hope he's never ever gone away from it. I mean, he's always been a great teacher, but he wanted that. So when he was walking one day, and one of his disciples, when he was in the Himalayas, actually saw him and went absolutely berserk, because no one had set eyes on him already. This was already after the year or whatever it was that he'd been gone. And so he brought this letter back from me. And I want you to listen to this letter, even if you've heard it before, because it says everything I'm trying to say today. He says, "To my dear mother, relatives, monastic community, students, and all those with whom I share a connection. Due to the blessings of the gurus, I'm in good health and not experiencing any obstacle. At present, I'm wandering without any fixed location from place to place. That makes me feel better about my temporary abode at the moment. You know that I'm fine." He was wandering around from place to place. He says, "Right now, I'm with Lama Tashi, whom I met unexpectedly. He earnestly asked to accompany me, and I accepted his request. He gave me food, clothing, and other necessities. He relayed to me both good and bad news, which left me feeling a mixture of happiness and sadness." He says, "I myself am wandering without any fixed location, staying in isolated mountain hermitages and other such places. I've experienced feelings of happiness and of suffering, rising and falling like waves on the surface of the ocean. At times, food and clothing have been hard to come by, and I have felt cold, hungry, and thirsty. Even when I've begged for alms, I received nothing but insults and harsh words. At other times, I receive food and clothing effortlessly without even asking for them. And in my mind, it felt as though I was enjoying the pleasures of the gods. While I've experienced both happiness and suffering, the most important thing is that a deep and heartfelt sense of certainty has arisen in the depths of my being, such that no matter what happens, I know that the true nature of these experiences, their very essence, is that of timeless awareness, okay, vast compassion. The natural clarity of awareness has been with us from the very beginning, he writes. It's the very essence and true nature of our minds. Day and night, it is always present. Therefore, one must maintain the flow of pure awareness to the best of one's ability without meditating, yet never getting lost in distraction. Great love and compassion are also innate qualities of our being. All the thoughts, destructive emotions, and suffering we encounter are, in essence, completely permeated by vast compassion. As a sign of this, we naturally wish to enjoy happiness and to be free of suffering. While all beings have great wisdom and compassion, this is not always apparent. This is not always apparent. This is simply because they have not recognized they have not recognized what they already have. Aside from merely recognizing our own true nature, there isn't the slightest thing to meditate on. Recognizing the importance of this, I have passed my days feeling joyful and content, wandering through the mountains and valleys and staying here and there. From my heart, I sincerely encourage all of you to practice diligently in this manner as well. Lamatashi has now returned to the letter. Oh, that's lovely if you give him. Oh, that was when he came out of the mountain. Fee, that's such a beautiful, that was when he met Taisitu. When he just returned, he had this long hair from being a monk. And they just, oh, that was the most beautiful picture of the world, really. Anyhow, that's too gorgeous, Fee. Lamatashi has now returned to the city with this letter and some pictures he requested. I hope you enjoy them, and I pray that we meet again before long, gathering together with joy and happiness to enjoy the richness of the Dharma. Now, I felt that that was so appropriate, hello Pam, really appropriate, and I think we were talking in the Shambhala of getting out of the cocoon that we've woven around us. Okay, scary at first. Then you take a hand out of the cocoon and a leg out of the cocoon. And then the world becomes workable no matter what we're going through. Let me throw it open in case anybody wants to ask me anything or anybody wants to say anything. Please, with pleasure. Pammy, you must try and go back to the beginning so you hear the whole intro, okay? Anyone want to say anything or ask anything, please? You're really welcome. Because it does make us think, doesn't it? It really makes us think. What am I doing here? What's this all about? And what's my aim in life? Switch on your cameras, all of you, so that I can see your beautiful faces. Anyone want to ask or say or comment? Not even you, Eugene. It's Eugene, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm feeling a bit cold or flu-y, so I'm not feeling hundreds. But
okay.
No. So like it's good. I read that book of Mingyur Rinpoche, like Joy. I can't remember the title. Yeah. So, but yeah, so what was interesting is that he was perfectly okay to die from food poisoning. So he was like literally sitting at the temple, at the stupa, and he was like living off scraps, and obviously the scraps were off. But it was interesting because I think he wanted to experience a harder existence, because I think he was always like cushioned a little bit from life. And I think like he wanted to get that exposure to really help him think a little bit, and also like see really how deep he can go with his meditation. Because I think it's easy to be kind and peaceful and compassionate when everything is looked after for you, you know. And like he was really like, okay, I want to have I want to see how this holds up when I'm on my own and having to beg for my next meal. But yeah, so it was a really interesting book to read. But I do like him. I like his sense of humor.
Now, he's got a sense of humor, and I've gone to a course of his once in the UK, and he did a lot of pointing out things. But for me, and everybody was always walking after him, and as you say, looking after him and looking up to him and all of that kind of thing. And I think this changed him. When I saw him come back from that retreat, it was absolutely amazing. But what is important is that in the Shambhala wisdom, what is called the dot in the open sky is that primordial, unconditional dot of goodness. And remember, it's unconditional. That means it doesn't depend on anything. It doesn't have preceding causes. It doesn't have post causes. It just exists on its own. And you know what? What's very important is that if you look at your angers and all of those kind of things, if you look at them, they're all conditional. This happened because of this. This happened because of this. This happened because of this. As soon as you know it's conditional, you know that it is impermanent, temporary, transient. But we don't. We act as though it's us. We act as though it's absolutely our whole lives, okay? And what's important to understand is that part of you is not conditioned from the stains, the habit patterns, the childhood, the education, your neuroses, your genetics. It's got none of that.
What was interesting from the book for me was like he almost enjoyed having a fever and being delusional. Because he's like, because he could kind of like snap out of his idea of who Minjer was. Like he said, he couldn't even remember at times who he was. And I think like, if I think back to the book, he also said that like obstacles are often a chance for you to reevaluate who you really are. And so am I really this job, this marriage, this parenthood, this wealth, this poverty, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And you have to keep asking that. Your whole life, you have to keep asking that, because it's really important to see. And Trungpa, when he spoke about the depressions of the world, especially we were talking in previous sessions, you can go and look them up, on that early morning depression and how we can make it workable. And what he said was, if you touch that primordial dot at the moment that you are facing something in your life, if you just relate to it at that moment, before you start thinking, remember, before you start thinking, when you start thinking, you've switched consciousness. But in the moment that you first see something, when it's open, spacious, able to give you so much, that moment before the thinking comes is the moment when you connect. That's the space for everything. They're out in the clear opening, clear seeing. Your vision is in the blue open spaciousness, and it's workable. And that's when we see it with discriminating wisdom. Discriminating wisdom is the wisdom that discerns between the relative and the ultimate. The depression is not bigger than you. It's not even you. And you can experience this free, spacious being, which is you, and you can step through that depression into the rising sun with the wisdom of temporary, transient, impermanent, habitual nature of depression. Now remember that that true nature is called Yeshe. Yeshe equals wisdom. Ye equals primordial. She equals knowing. So it's called primordial knowing. You know the truth and you let it happen. You know the truth. And Shambhala training is living in that challenge, okay? He also spoke about the cosmic sneeze. We did that in an earlier session. The first moment of unconditional goodness, fearlessness, before the thinking starts, the moment of knowing, like when someone, you know, like you watch people and somebody is going to get run over, and there's a person standing on the side of the road. And in 1 second, they dive into the road and pull the person out of the car that's coming. Now, how do they know to do that so quickly? But if you start thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to get in? The car's coming. I'm also going to be in the accident. It's gone. It's at that moment when the truth of you can reach out to somebody else. You see them, you experience them, you know what they are going through. But once the thinking comes, oh, well, I wonder about this. He calls it the cosmic sneeze. The cosmic sneeze is when you can react without thinking, but it's not thoughtless, because thoughtless means you might do something really stupid. It's really that part of you knows exactly. And because it knows how to react. Now, if you apply that to a dangerous situation, you can see it clearly. But what about applying it to the depression? What about applying it to your insecurities? What about applying it to your not liking of yourself? Because if you are able to touch it, all of that will dissolve straight away. You do not need to go into the ocean. And actually, when the wave is coming, you do not need to go into that ocean and say, wave, wave, you're too high, you're going to break. Don't do that. Or wave, wave, you're too low. The wave doesn't need us to do that. It naturally rises and it naturally goes back into the ocean. Now, so does all of what we are if we live in the ocean. But if we live in the whole thing of this is my life, poor me, with all our neuroses and all our insecurities, we can never allow that part to come through us. It's so important. That's what Chogyam Trungpa stood up in all these audiences, and he bowed to all the people, and he bowed to their basic goodness, and he trained them to see it in a different way. Everything. It's really important. And to try to make your life sacred, he called it joining heaven and earth. How do we join heaven and earth? How do we bring that light, that beauty, that purity into our daily earthly living? How do we do it? The first step of it all, okay, is that setting sun mentality makes everything that's beautiful and whole into bad and evil and analyzes it in every conceivable way. Okay? But one of the first things that we've got to learn is that there is that it is okay to feel sad and it's okay to feel happy. You can feel both. To be sacred, you need to feel sadness. That sadness reaches out to touch other people. You understand what people are going through when you experience sadness. You don't have to get rid of the sadness. You have to see it for what it is. It's actually so simple, but people don't really understand that, or they don't go along with it. But it's really important. And we talked about the discipline of the 4 seasons, where Kerry, we got your lovely thing outside your office, and I hope you've looked at it over and over again, because the seasons are very clear to us. All the 4 seasons, we can have them in one day. The winter, the time of going in, the time of being cold and looking inwards and closing yourself off. Then the autumn, when things are starting to open and flowers are starting to blossom. And then the spring, and then the summer, which could be quite hot. But those happen all the time, okay? And we need to learn. And he said that working with yourself involves a journey as part of every one of us. Has to go through our own garbage. He said, and some of this garbage has to be discarded, but some is organic garbage which can be recycled. Now, what is your organic garbage? I'll tell you what it is. It's actually amazing when you think about it, because you can't philosophize and look at it or rationalize it, okay? I mean, Buddha, when he was going to gain enlightenment, and he was attacked by all the demons, and they were trying to influence him not to get enlightened. And his statement, which Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche says, he says right at the end, when he's about to attain enlightenment, I've done my deed. I cast off all my baggage. Now, when can we say this? Can we at least say this at death? I've done my deed and I cast off all my baggage. Okay, that's what he said. I think that what's very important here is that we look very, very deeply and straight at all our neuroses, okay? Why am I always afraid? Not why, looking at the fear, always looking to be recognized, always blaming others, always playing the victim. We look at that straight. We recognize it. We see that we're doing it. And if you stick with it, he says, you cheat yourself. You cheat yourself if you stick with it. I often say to myself, no, Melanie, this is not on. Okay? What you said now is not on. I talk to myself about it. You look at it straight, okay? Because what is the garbage and what is not? Now, Thich Nhat Hanh does it in a very beautiful way. And he says like this. I'm going to do some meditation. He says like this. Defiled or immaculate, dirty or pure, we're looking at our garbage. These are concepts we form in our mind. A beautiful rose we have just cut and placed in our vase is pure. It smells so good, so fresh. A garbage can is the opposite. It smells horrible and it's filled with rotten things. But that's only when we look on the surface. If we look more deeply, we will see that in just 5 or 6 days, The rose will become part of the garbage. We do not need to wait 5 days to see it. If we just look at the rose and we look deeply, we can see it now. We can see, okay, we can see that if we look in the garbage can, we can see that in a few months, the contents of this garbage can be transformed into lovely vegetables and even a rose. He says, if you are a good organic gardener, looking at the rose, you can see the garbage. And looking at the garbage, you can see the rose, because the roses and the garbage inter-are. Without a rose, you can't have garbage. Without garbage, you cannot have a rose. They need each other very much, he says. The rose and the garbage are equal. The garbage is just as precious as the rose. If we look deeply at the concepts of defilement and immaculateness, we return to the notion of interbeing. So what are we looking at? If we look at anger, the garbage, anger is really mirror-like wisdom. If you saw it in its pure form, it wouldn't be anger, it would be mirror-like wisdom. Does that mean that anger is recyclable? Yes, I think it is. I think if you look again, you recycle the anger into mirror-like wisdom. You recycle the craving and attachment into discriminating wisdom. You recycle the pride into the wisdom of equality, which means everybody's equal with their Buddha nature. You transform the envy and jealousy into the wisdom of perfected action, and the ignorance or delusion into the all-accomplishing wisdom. So yes, they are recyclable. Did you know that? You're all skipping me and looking at me. Did you know that? Did you know that you had recyclable garbage? But before you can recycle it, you really need to look deeply and see what it is. Shall we meditate? Okay. If you don't want to ask and you don't, tonight you're all quiet and that's fine. I don't mind. But as long as you're not switching off, then I'm okay. Just ponder what he's giving and what I'm adding to it, because it's really important. Because who are we? Who are we? There's that beautiful story that goes, I'm a Democrat, I'm a socialist, I'm a communist, I'm an artist, I'm a thinker, I'm a sensitive and tough, macho but vulnerable, good, clean, pure. Who are we without these labels? When you really let go of all the pros and cons, who are you then? Drop all your likes and dislikes, notion of career and position, then who is left? I don't know. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. This is how we feel. But it isn't true. When we really let go, we become everything. At that point, we are identified with all things, the flower, the oak tree, the morning star. So maybe we have to have a rethink about ourselves, who we are. Let's do some. Go on, please.
I have a question. So basically, is there any sort of meditation or contemplation we can do when we go through, example, you're mad about something? How do you train yourself towards seeing as a mirror like wisdom and any other kind of wisdom?
How do you train? Yes, there is a lot of training you can do for that. But it takes a little bit of time to understand. You know, like I said to one or two of these people that are here, like I said to people who haven't been coming regularly to groups and everything, it's important that you train so that you understand it. Okay, we'll do some meditation with it right now. Okay, some contemplation with it right now. But what's really important is that you just You start in the beginning to wake up to the fact that this is not who you are. That's your step number one. Because you know what we like. We look in the mirror, we see our physicality, we see what we've achieved. It's usually bugger all, okay? Some of us might have achieved more important things or a little more, but basically we look at ourselves and we think, oh, who am I and what have I done? And have I done anything really worth talking about? Have I this, have I that? We identify with that. But when we start identifying that this is just the ego we've put together for this lifetime, then we can start looking at all the things that we are, and let's do it now instead of me talking about it. Okay, so let's get into your meditation posture. Why that's good is only to bring all the energy into the central channel. Why? We've got many channels in our body, many nadis, but the central one is the one in which everything just is. There's no good and bad. There's no right and wrong. It just is how it is. So when we manage to bring the energy into the central channel and not down in men the right and in women the left channel, which is really where all the negative emotions are, the right channel is the wisdom, but not the primordial wisdom. So it's better down that channel. But we want to bring all the energy into the central channel, and then we can just be. Now, that's the most important thing, because when you can just be without thinking, then you are able to relate to what the Shambhala wisdom is and what the Buddha Dharma is. But what's very important, and once you've got that, you can even do your meditation walking in the garden, looking into the sky, when you're at the supermarket. You can do it anytime. It's just the training to bring it into the central channel that we need to do in the beginning. So we do that with breathing in to the count of 3 or 4, but a big breath in. And as we breathe in, we are breathing in this most beautiful, beautiful nature. It's blue. It's open. You know, it's such a beautiful blue that when you first see it, you will not believe this color blue because it doesn't exist. It shines, that blue. It's spacious. It's open. It's full of possibility. And there's space for everything. And we breathe into this beautiful, spacious nature, very wide, very broad, able to fit everything in. We breathe it into our being. And when we breathe out all the things we are holding on to, the angers, the circumstances, the fears, the anxieties. We breathe it right into this blue spaciousness. We don't touch it. We don't think about it. The thinking is no problem if you don't touch it, and you don't interfere, and you don't judge, and you don't hold on to, and you don't analyze. You just breathe it out. And whatever's there in your thinking and feeling just goes straight into the sky, exactly like the waves in the ocean. They are part of that pure, open, spacious nature. But because of our holding on, because of our analysis, because of our judging, They can't just dissolve. But in this meditation, we let them dissolve. Breathing in and out. Letting it all breathe out. Nothing to hold on to. No ego, no identity, no defending, no rationalizing, no analysis, just being. Nothing more. Simple. Now, as we develop this, we are able to see when all these thoughts and feelings dissolve and really become pure perception. There are 5 main negative emotions. And those emotions are simply how you live this life all the time. Anger, craving, jealousy, attaching, envy, all of those, pride, are just the things we attach to, but actually they are the pure expression of this beautiful nature. They are really the wisdoms. It takes us a long time to see that, Tati, but it doesn't matter. In the beginning, we just breathe in the pureness, the spaciousness of our vast mind, and we breathe out all the things we've been holding on to. When we look deeply, actually, we begin to understand that this pure essence, this pure Buddha nature, this pure emptiness, this pure awareness expresses itself in the most beautiful way, but we can't see it. So we start in the beginning to just let it all be, to let it out, to express it into completely into the spaciousness of our true nature. And in time, we will be able to see how it expresses itself very purely. But right now, it's just no holding on, no analysis, just really being in the spaciousness of the beauty of our pure nature. And if you can do this meditation with a view of the sky, it's really, really a good thing. Then you really view the sky and you can see it as an analogy for your beautiful, spacious mind. Roland, Lee, Cherry, do you want to ask anything? Do you want to say anything? Do you want to understand anything? Any of you? I don't mind that you're quiet tonight. It's fine. As long as you're understanding and you're getting what this is trying to show, because it's really trying to show you that your life, this temporary life, is workable. Wherever you are, Mart, even if you've got to emigrate to somewhere you don't want to be, wherever you are, it's just a temporary, transient thing. It's all going to change sooner or later. Roland, do you want to ask anything? You okay? Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yes, thanks.
Great. You ask me whatever you want, and I don't care how basic anybody's questions are. I'm so happy if you ask your basic questions and you ask what you want to know. I'm really, really happy because, you know, I think that if you can't apply this to your daily life, then I think it's useless. You know, I'm not trying to give you information that you can't use. And Tati, you will find that eventually when you begin to understand the wisdoms, how you understand those wisdoms, I get to understand them by doing the prayers every day. It's amazing because then I see them. I see what mirror-like wisdom is. I see what all of that, you know, what all of that is. For the reminding of the five, yeah, good. It is true. But you see it because here is your recyclable garbage. That we're not those things, we're not the depression, we're not the anger, we're not the anxiety. These are just temporary, transient, impermanent things. And when we look at it, it's completely different. So important. It really, really is so important in your life. Because if we can't change our lives, then how do we get anywhere? Da, are you following all of this? Because I know you know this, Da. Hey, yeah. You okay with it?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
So then, if we look at it, everything, he says, starts with the primordial dot, the basic goodness. And then there are two paths. There's the path of liberation, which all of us are trying to go on. And there's the path of delusion. What's the difference? How do we go on the path of liberation? And how do we go on the path of delusion? We go on the path of liberation when we recognize, we know that everything that you experience with your eyes, with your ears, with your smell, with your taste, everything you experience, okay, is just an expression of this pure nature. You see it. You even see that your anxiety, your depression is actually just an expression. It's not the truth, but it's an expression of it. When we realize that the two are one, that everything is one, then you're on the path of liberation. When you break it up and you start saying, here I am, and there is my anger, my thoughts, my life circumstances, my pain that I'm going through, my terror, my everything. When we break it up, and now it becomes me versus it, it's dualistic. It's dualistic. When it becomes dualistic, that actually means that you've gone on the path of delusion. You at this point, and you go on the path of liberation or the path of delusion, doesn't mean you change anything. You just see it in a completely different way. That's what the Shambhala wisdom is all about. Fee, do you want to say anything? Are you, because you understand this very, very well, right?
Yes, to a large extent, yeah. But it's, I don't know, it's just, I mean, at the moment, I have to be honest, I'm going through a stage of, do I understand it very, very well? Just in general, I'm having one of those.
Why are you going through that
I think
stage?
it's just, I'm going through a lot of
Decisions
decisions and you know, I've, you know, work has suddenly gone crazy and very busy and all that sort of stuff. And then you sort of, that's when you realize you know, am I actually able to apply all of this stuff? I do my best, but it's just sometimes things become overwhelming. And then you realize just how mired you are in samsara, and you wonder, can I actually, you know, get that vision, you know, and maintain, not vision, but you know what I mean, get myself into that place and actually maintain that,
Yeah.
that.
But you know,
mm.
You know what you're saying? I'm so happy you said it. Because for me, it's your stuff that I want to take and put it into this wisdom. I don't want to just sprout out the wisdom of Shambhala or the wisdom of the Dharma. I want to hear these circumstances. Now, do you know what I hear in your voice? I hear too high a demand on yourself. That's what's talking to, as
that's what I've been thinking, Mel. It's like I keep on telling myself exactly that, like, just calm down. It doesn't matter that much in the great scheme of things. Don't get so worked up. I'm not getting as worked up about it as I used to.
Good.
I can still gain a tiny little bit of perspective and think, no, now just calm down. It's not going to be the end of the world if this happens or that doesn't happen, or, you know, but still, I can feel myself getting sucked.
Yes, but what I can hear is that you are demanding of yourself that you always in a perfect state of whatever, that now that you've got this teaching, you need to always be in a perfect state. But that's not the truth. Because clearly, whenever, no matter how far you are, no matter what enlightenment you've attained, there are always things that trip you up. And when they trip you up, you've got to remember that you can dust off and start again. You're never going to keep up that thing. Ask my husband, he's sitting here, he'll say, oh, well, you don't do that all the time. I do it a lot of the time. And then sometimes I just fall and then I lose it and I'm so mad about something, okay? I mean, all of us do. We're human. We're in a human embodiment. So we can't demand that perfect standard because only a Buddha can demand that perfect standard. Only when you're fully awakened can you. Yeah. But the bottom line is that when you are going through your difficulties at work and your low feeling in the morning, and when people are going through, oh my God, do I do this? Do I do this? Will this give me what I want? Will this be everything that I want in my life? Of course it won't. But remember, be kind to yourself. Don't put that beating. You know, sometimes I say to people, here's a whip. Go and whip yourself, okay? I mean, it's absolutely brilliant that we've got solutions because this Buddha mind and this awakened mind and this Shambhala wisdom has got solutions for all your daily problems and sees it in a beautiful way. Even your angers, even your anxieties, even your insecurities, even if your fear that you've got a terrible leader leading your country and everything, you know, we all go through it. But the idea is that as we're going down the slide, we suddenly stop. We climb off the slide and we say, hang on, I was zooming down the slide. Let me stop. Let me climb up. Let me just take 2 minutes to just breathe in my beautiful nature and awaken and start again. But don't start again condemning yourself. That's our problem. We've got so much self-condemnation and self-hatred. That's one of his topics. I haven't even got to it yet. Okay, blaming ourselves and, oh, well, it's no good. You better give up your practice because you haven't done brilliantly today because you've lost it or you haven't managed or you don't know what to do or you're in a pickle or whatever the case is. That's okay. That's okay. That's human. That's the human qualities. But once you have that recognition, you can change the station. You know, when you're watching a television program and you hate it, you power onto another station. Okay, you don't sit. Well, sometimes we do torture ourselves watching something we don't want to watch, but you know, you change the station. So then you just have a little wake up. You say, you know what, I'm feeling terrible. I'm going to walk in the garden for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. And I'm going to just wake up again to what this is all about. But I'm not going to work out what this is all about. I'm just going to open to it so that it can happen through me. The best things that happen to you in your life are the things that happen through you, not from you. My best teaching is when it happens through me, not from me. Do you understand that? And I'm happy what you said, because it's really, really important that. And when you understand that, he says, letting go is not just carefree or sloppy. You still have discipline. You still have integrity. He says, but Shambhala society is concerned with what happens when we depart from the womb. So we're in the womb of our mother, and then we regroup into a family clan. And he says, we have to separate ourselves and yet come together in comradeship. Now, what's he saying? He's saying what I hear people saying to me every day. Melanie, how did I get to this family? I mean, it's the wrong family for me. How did I get to? How did I get to have this father? How did I get to have this mother? How did I get to have these siblings? They all don't fit for me. I have that all the time. And I say, you got to them because this is the best thing for your learning in the schoolroom. And because your imprints brought you to this family with all the stuff you don't like, so that you can look in the mirror. And if you don't resolve it, like some people say to me, Melanie, the only way I could manage was to go away from my family and never see them again. And I go, well, great, you're going to come back with them next time. Yeah. Well done, you know, because finish it. Finish what you've got to do. You're in the right place at the right time, okay? And it's really important. And he says, letting go is not letting go of the tradition, but letting go of modern trappings that work against the ideal human society and use a better effort, a better energy, a better wisdom, okay? And really, he says you need to have a decent household. But lots of people are different to their families. And how do they find a way of dealing with their families and yet not being rude and abusive and out of sorts with the traditions of their family? It's an art. Because when you feel okay in yourself, not only okay in your human self, but when you feel that you've got that Buddha nature, and you feel that that primordial dot is operating in you, then you don't need to prove yourself anymore. If your family is saying you this and you that and you the other and you crazy and all of these kind of things, doesn't really matter. You can still love them and be part of them without blending in with what they are giving you as their ideals. I think it's enough for today. I've got so much, but I just want to say what we are looking for is a sacred existence. And that sacred existence comes when heaven and earth are joined together. It becomes sacred. So what he's asking you to do is to bring the goodness into your daily life. Bring the heaven in. Bring happiness and sadness together. Don't say, I only want happiness. Take the sadness, which mixes the alchemy, which gives you the understanding of people. You bring it together. You bring the heaven and the earth together. And that's how you live your life sacredly, respecting other people, valuing who they are, pointing out to them, but not harming and hurting them. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Well, let's dedicate quickly. And then if anybody needs to ask me, I'm very happy to answer, because you haven't asked a lot of questions and there was a lot of stuff here. But let's dedicate all this teaching to all those suffering, to those poor hostages, to those poor Gazians who haven't got homes, to all the people in the middle of the wars, to the Ukrainians who don't know where they are anymore, to everyone, to the evil leaders of this planet, who let them wake up to see that they're not benefiting beings and that they're going to have a long karmic history after that. Let them wake up to it. Let us all wake up to it. Everyone going through suffering. If there's anything in this teaching that people can benefit, then it's wonderful. And through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience. May all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe tranam pamshene jeganachi balap tropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho.